Hey guys, today's video is written by my cousin Jacqueline, actually, but since she's camera shy, I'll be doing all the talking like usual. Cancellation is one of those things that we feel somewhat familiar with and yet seems distant. For those of us who aren't as active on a certain few websites, we probably don't even really know what it's like. And although it might sound a bit silly, as someone who's decently active on Twitter, I've seen it happen to people. People who are as distant as creators with millions of followers, and as close as good friends I know who had never heard a fly. Out of a few specific places, how cancellation happens and what it entails is just really misunderstood. The truth is, it does hurt people. Even right now, there are people going through this, and what's being done to them just isn't right. So, because I really haven't seen anyone address this overarching problem properly, I felt like I had to speak out about it. First of all, we should make clear what cancellation isn't. For a lot of people who aren't familiar with the concept, they might think they know it's just people taking things you've said from the past that could be seen as bigoted and then trying to tear you down, right? It's even a talking point that some people like to use that a cancel culture is just the way that these woke Puritans attack people they don't see as liberal enough for their standards. But the truth is, they have it backwards. Let's take a look at one real life example first. That of a fairly popular show whose creator was on the receiving end of something that was admittedly more of a harassment campaign than some kind of cancellation attempt. The issue at hand was that the creator had made a character who many of the fanbase disliked so much, in fact, that this distaste extended to the creator themselves, and people began to dig into their past to find things they said before that could be seen as racist, since that was what was decided would be the issue here, and went on to not only paint this creator as racist, but go out of their ways to attack and belittle them. I think some in the audience might recognize what I'm talking about here. It's certainly a terrible situation, but it's worth noting that the incident did not start because of these minor incidents that began in the past. It was because people were already angry at this person, then dug backwards to see if they could find anything useful that could be used to verify their belief that they were bad. No matter what, some people just want to start something. So it doesn't matter if you've always tried to stay moral and never said anything problematic. If people don't like you, then they'll find some way to paint you as a bad person. It's almost as if people have forgotten the concept of just disliking somebody and have to root their dislike in moral outrage, perhaps for fear of being seen as overly dramatic. But still, that's just my personal view of what could be happening, and I'm by no means asserting that I know what people who do this kind of thing think. So I did the logical thing, I interviewed one of them. Now, although this person wasn't involved in the drama that I mentioned above, they were closely tied to a separate situation that was much more small scale. This person, let's call them Billy, had an issue with Susie, and they were having a conflict of sorts. Annie, who is Susie's friend, intervened due to them feeling that Susie was being unfairly targeted. Billy then retaliated by bringing some accusations against Susie to light, and many people were quickly involved. Although the entire situation ended up in a sort of drawl, with hostilities dying down, the beginning could be said to be a textbook cancellation operation. At the beginning of my interview with Billy, I asked them for a text-based interview, which I disclaimed, is that a word? Would be presented anonymously as part of a video. So here we go. So my first question was, would you consider the things that happened canceling, or is there another term you prefer? For example, maybe something like an expose? And Billy replies, honestly, I wouldn't call it canceling, since I personally think the term is just juvenile, but I think it was just petty drama that escalated into bigger issues, you know what I mean? I said, I see. So as a follow-up, would you consider a drama to kind of be the inciting point for the later stuff? And do you feel like you had an obligation to point out or try to reveal what you saw as behavior that needed calling out? Bailey responds, honestly, I don't remember the situation all that well. I just personally didn't like Susie. But I think when Annie came in, the situation escalated more since the interactions I had with them were the main ones that I pointed out as an issue. I don't really have an issue with Susie anymore or anything, though I still don't really like Annie. I replied, so do you still remember the emotions you felt at the time? Like, say, did you feel some sense of duty towards exposing Annie? Or did it feel exhilarating, like a rush of positive emotions? Or was it more kind of like you just disliked them already and wanted to make a point to punish them? You know, just how you felt at the time regarding why you did it? They replied, honestly, not really. It was a very stressful day for me. I was having the issue with Susie when Annie involved themselves out of nowhere, and some drama stuff, and more stuff for that I won't show for privacy reasons, and I really don't want to get into it. I see. That's what I said. So you more felt that it was just business as usual or something that had to be taken care of. I see. Would you consider them to have malicious intent from your point of view? Bailey responds, at first it upset me, and to some degree it still does. The situation was resolved with basically them telling me I was in the wrong, with both sides deleting most of the posts about it, and Annie never really giving me an apology and ignoring anyone who criticized them and only replying to those blaming me and defending him. I replied, Would you say you gave it consideration as to how they might feel or see the situation, including things they did or didn't know? Or were you more concerned at the time with how it was impacting you directly? No judgment, to be clear, just want to clarify some things. And would you consider more of the one responsible for the situation? Billy replies, honestly, I wasn't considering them purely because of the fact that they had jumped in of their own volition and I hadn't really said anything to or about them. And then some other stuff regarding the situation. So after this whole interview, I think we can safely say that what I said earlier about the motivations of a cancellation are at least somewhat accurate. It's also worth noting that Billy themselves didn't see this as a cancellation. From their point of view, they were merely upset at Annie and decided to use what they reasonably could against someone that they disliked. To be clear, I don't want to condemn Billy as simply a bad, selfish person. They're also dealing with a lot of things themselves. Even if we were put into their position, I feel like most of us would feel the need to do the same, especially if we felt that Annie had wronged us to such a degree. On the other hand, the situation wasn't fair to Annie at all either. After all, they only thought to defend their friend Susie, and they had plenty of arguments of their own as to why they felt what Billy said wasn't accurate, even if many people attacking them had taken it to be. Is there something you've noticed? None of the people involved had bad intentions. They weren't maliciously seeking to tear someone down. All of them only did what they thought was right, but especially in Billy's case, they failed to consider the circumstances of others. Billy had gone after Annie rather aggressively and really had not thought much about the things they'd said in their own defense. Maybe if Billy had realized the impact that their words had on Annie, they would have realized that they had no reason to be so at odds. The truth is, this kind of conflict does nothing to change the world for the better. Everyone involved likely won't ever be important enough to be able to affect the lives of thousands or even millions. When there are powerful people actively ruining the lives of others, why do we attack our fellow nobodies with such vitriol? Is it perhaps because we're tired of being powerless against big shot politicians and we project that sense of helplessness onto other people we can do damage to? That's just a guess, so it's really impossible to know for sure. As an aside, I asked Billy one more question. What's your opinion on Michael Jackson regarding the allegations and everything? Do you think he was innocent or guilty? Billy responds, honestly, I'd rather believe victims over the accused, and even if he was innocent, he was still a famous rich man, and courts tend to have bias to people with money. And him hanging out with kids was still weird, even if he wasn't a pedophile, you know? Now, admittedly, I am a friend of Annie's, so I had a bit of an inclination to paint Billy in a negative light when I was first working on the script. I would have said something about how, for example, people who engage in this kind of behavior often only think about their own impression of issues. They don't seek to consider complicating factors. And then I would have talked about how, for example, they didn't know other details about the case, about his childhood, the possible conditions he had, that kind of thing. But then, as I was working on the script, I realized something more important. Why should Billy care or know about this? This really isn't an issue that's particularly important to them, and it's not something that's considered extremely important or widely known by a lay audience, especially since Billy's still young. I feel like for someone who just had no reason to and did not research this issue, this is like a pretty reasonable take. So in looking down upon them for their lack of knowledge on this subject, am I the one who's judging others without considering their circumstances? Am I the one who's trying to cancel Billy? At the end of the day, it's really not helpful to use petty things to attack other ordinary people like this. Instead of wasting our effort and vitriol on trying to hurt people we hope might be vulnerable enough for our words to take effect, why not recognize that in the end, we're really all ordinary people who aren't that different from each other? And if you really dislike him, you can just say that. You don't have to use other stuff. In an ideal world, maybe Billy would have asked if Annie was okay instead of just heading out to kill. But we don't live in an ideal world. Still, I think that if we all try to be more considerate and don't just go along with the selfish kind of justice, we can work together to make the world a better place. That's all for today's video, and thank you for watching.